Hello and welcome to yet another focus chat in the series of focus chats on very specific topics that we believe are very interesting for you as viewers or as members in various software development teams. I am Alex Bolboaca and I'm coming to you from the Mozaic Works studios. The topic of today is team agreements, and we'll talk about what they mean and why they are useful. But first, let me introduce my partner in crime for this focus chat. Welcome, as always, Adi.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for attending. So, before we move into the actual topic, by now you should know that I like to start by asking, what have you done in the past or since our last focus chat?
Yeah, so I've been doing many things, as always, but I think amongst the most interesting are the fact that I'm working to create a new team or some new teams, and because of that, as always, I'm working on these team agreements, and this is where I think this topic came to. And also, yes, working to help some organizations be have more business agility and be able to deliver better and faster, and that's keeping me busy for a while.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. And actually, I am interested in, and this topic actually came to my mind as well these days. For the past few weeks, I've been working on upgrading our website, which is something that you don't know, but you as viewers, but you will see soon because we plan to publish it. There are still a few things left, but um, the basic structure is done and everything. This was a very interesting experiment because what I've done is I've tried to build um, and to solve problems without using too much custom code, just the minimum possible custom code. And that's maybe something we can discuss about at a later or in another focus chat.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, I'm also developing a course for Scrum Masters who tend to be, let's say, they are not given the proper attention from my perspective. Often organizations assume that you send everybody to a certified Scrum Master course and they turn back and they know everything there is to know about being a Scrum Master. And that is, as we have seen again and again and again, not correct. So what we have been doing, and you've been helping me as well, was to develop this course and to, well, we already had a lot of materials, but just to put them together and to present them in another manner, in a better way. And I've also been designing some games, but about that we'll have to discuss at a later time. Games for learning, for teaching people. And the reason I'm interested, and this idea came to my mind about team agreements, is because I have to present them to Scrum Masters in a few weeks. One of the groups that will take this learning program that I am currently working on. And so I think it's useful to start from asking the most important question. Why do we need team agreements?
Mm-hmm.
Can't a team just self-organize as, you know, because Agile is about self-organization. So you put people together and by magic, they understand each other and they self-organize and everything works smoothly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. But with an exception that it doesn't work like that. there are many reasons why you don't, or you most of the times, only in one situation it happened to me where I could skip from a team that wasn't working in this very collaborative way to working self-organized immediately. And in this only one situation it happened like that because people from were in a small organization, I think 30 or 40 people, and they just decided they want to work in a different way with cross functional teams. And in that team, I think most of them had something like 15 years experience in the organization. The one who had the least experience was 1.5 years, and it was only one, but the rest was in between 7 and 15 years experience and have been working for that long together. So that's why they could work together and be self-organized without team agreements. But that's just one situation. For all the others, I found them useful, and that's the reason, because people have different ways of looking at the world, different needs, different habits, different values. So we need to see which are the ones that we want to use in order to be able to be productive in this cross-functional system. That's the idea.
Yes, and I think that one of the challenges here is that, so if you would start with people that are fresh in the job and you just give them a problem and you give them the necessary resources, and perhaps they have some experts that can help them or teach them what they don't know, and you put them in a room and say, okay, this is the problem that you're working on, figure it out. Then self-organization will happen up to a point. But the main problem, I think one of the problems is actually that we are dealing with people who have been in organizations, who have not worked as self-organizing groups, and therefore who have gained a few habits or who have tried a few things in the organization that were, and they got poor feedback. And then they remove some of the more useful feedbacks, more useful habits of collaboration from their way of working. And because of that, I think partly it can be because of your natural personality as an individual, and sometimes these don't fit, or your personal values and so on. But I think that often another factor is also the history within the organization, the things that you have done for a long time, and we've always done things like that, and because of that, collaboration doesn't come that easily when you move people into cross-functional teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very close way of working, and you can really easily be bothered or annoyed by anyone who works that close to you. While if you would work in a, let's say, I wouldn't call it traditional, but more far used way, where you have these silos where you work with people who are more or less on the same specialization like you, like all the programmers or the testers, etc., then probably you might have more similar habits. Even like that, it can happen that you have different ways of working. But when you put someone who has a focus on business, someone who has a focus on analysis, someone who has a focus on risk, someone who has a focus on delivery, someone who has a focus on implementation, already you need to have a way of trying to work together better. And I think that's one of the moments when you start having let's say fights, or people start arguing about what you need to do. And in a way, the beauty of it is that typically everyone is right. because what should we focus now on? Implementation, on business, on quality, on so yeah. So but you need to sort it out, and team agreements is one of these situations where it can help. And what you said, something very interesting, that it's part of the organization and part of the culture, maybe to be in a certain way. And of course, an organization can forge you, can form you in a certain way. But it's also with a tool like team agreements, it's also a tool of change management, because you start maybe introducing some other aspects that maybe were denied in the past, but now if you put them on paper, if you really put them black on white, people will be encouraged to go at them again. And one of them would be maybe feedback, giving feedbacks, what you mentioned, because you aren't allowed to give feedback to your boss in some organizations. Or of course you should give feedback, but when you do that, immediately someone will scream at you or something. So of course you won't do that again. But if you put this as an agreement and you see that you can do it, then of course you'll start again giving feedback, something that you'd like to, but the organization forced you not to do that until then. But there are also other things like that, like being open. There are organizations where you where they really push programmers to be programmers and testers to be testers. But if you put in the team agreements, hey, you can get out of this very narrow role, and you can also test, or you can also learn how to be a programmer, or you can also do analysis, or and so on, then you start having more natural cross-functional team. So you can do a lot of things with team agreements in this way.
And the way I explain it usually to people and to Scrum Masters who are starting teams is that a cross-functional team becomes fundamentally like a micro society, because what you want is to have self-organization. So how do you have self-organization? You cannot have chaos, right? No group will work if there are no rules. If you
Yes.
And of course Scrum comes with a certain rules if you are applying Scrum, and the organization has a few sets of rules, and so you are expected already to work within a few constraints that are set for you.
Sure. Yeah.
But above that, I am suddenly with 5 other people or with 7 other people, and we have different focuses. Maybe I know them better, maybe I don't, maybe I like them, maybe I don't. And there's always a somewhat weird period in the beginning when we start figuring out not only how to work, but how to work together, how to have fun together, and how to be productive together, and what things can we do to celebrate our successes, or things like that. And so what basically you are doing is forming a micro society, and the micro society works like any society by setting a few rules, right?
Yes.
Looking at higher level at societies, we know that it's bad to steal from others, but this is just let's say an extreme example. But then there are more specific examples, like you don't go and meet Germans and arrive late, because they will think you are very, very rude, right? So there are also some cultural rules that emerge inside the society in time. And basically what these team agreements are helping you to make very clear, very obvious, very transparent what you decide as a micro society, but also to preserve your memory as a society as the team changes, as you get different problems to solve, as you perhaps add more people to the team, or perhaps some people leave and other people come. Then it's very useful to preserve this memory, because otherwise you might remember it, but perhaps the new people do not necessarily follow those rules that you decided in the past, and then you have friction again and so on. And so this is one of the key goals, I think, of team agreements.
Yeah. Another thing I'm looking at is common sense, because this is where you're going to, in a way. And I typically, I think almost always when I've done this exercise about team agreements with teams, there was someone, at least one person, if not more, in that group who said, but this is common sense. And my typical answer is that there is no common sense. My common sense is different than your common sense, because as you mentioned, with some cultures, in some culture it's common sense to be on time. In other cultures it's common sense to be late 1 or 2 hours and nobody's bothered by this. So what is common sense? There is no such thing. There is only very concrete, very clear agreement that we have amongst ourselves, and in a way we go into this exercise with all of our common senses, and we put them together, and we want to see what works for this situation, for this small organization, as you mentioned, for this small society, and what doesn't work, what doesn't make sense. And I would like also to come up with some very clear examples that I typically see popping up during this type of team agreements exercises.
Sure. I'd like to go into that as well. But
Okay.
first, I think it's useful to understand that we are not talking about having 100 agreements,
No, for sure,
100
no.
rules, or 50 rules, or 30 rules.
No, we're not a parliament. No, we want to have less and simple agreements. Yes.
Yeah, so probably around maybe 10, maybe less. And one thing that's important is do not add a rule unless you had a problem with that thing. I mean, if everybody is coming at the scheduled time for all the meetings, it's not worth adding a rule saying we must be on time, because everybody is on time. So it's already a built-in rule in that micro society.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything else.
Even more, what happens is that after a while, I'd say 2-3 months, you need to revisit them. And that's what happens. You see that after a while you don't like this situation, being late. If you put that in agreement there, and after 3-6 months nobody's late anymore, you can remove it. It's better like that, because it used its purpose to educate, let's say, but it's not really education, to align our agreements, our way of working in our micro society, and now we don't need it anymore. And if someone new will come to our team, probably when they will be late, anyone from the team would say, hey, please don't be late, because. So that's what you want. You don't want to have like the boss, or the whoever that boss is, the manager, the scrum master, the product owner, whatever boss, telling them you shouldn't be late or you will have 10% less of your salary. What you want is the team members to give each other feedback, and in this way to adjust their agreements.
Right. So, and this takes us, because now we set the ground for why we need team agreements and how many you should have. Let's look at some examples of team agreements.
Typically, in let's say in Latin cultures, and in Romania it's the same, but where I work in Latin cultures, let's say that people are sometimes late, and this is bothering. And that's why this is one of the agreements that I saw happening, that if you're late, you need to tell someone. There are different variations here, like if you're late, I don't know, you need to send a message 5 minutes before, or before the meeting starts or something like that, to announce that you won't be there. That's one of the examples of things that I see most often popping up. What's your example?
Preparing before meetings.
That's
one
universal.
yeah. I often go to various types of meetings. It can be planning, it can be a design discussion, it can be any type of meeting where you have a goal, you have an agenda. Maybe somebody has done the work of preparing some documents, sending them to you, and so on. But most people just show up at the, or okay, not most people. I've seen often in practice people showing up and saying, "Oh, I haven't read anything, and let's go through all the documents and all the things." Um, and this is not effective because some things you can read and prepare beforehand, but also uh, the reason why it's a problem in a micro society is that you are wasting other people's time who maybe have read that thing and have prepared and have come with ideas. So that's one. Another one that I often notice in conversations, particularly between technical people, is to acknowledge the other person's perspective. You often have conversations of the form, so I see some piece of code and I say I don't like that piece of code. And instead of acknowledging my perspective and trying to understand why I'm saying that, and perhaps I have some good reasons, what I get is a pushback.
Yeah.
It's no, that piece of code is good. And now suddenly we are adversarial instead of working together trying to figure out what's a better way of writing that piece of code. Because maybe I am wrong, maybe I didn't understood it, but if I was wrong, then at least I'm learning something from this exchange. But maybe I have seen something that indeed is a problem, and then we can both learn something from that exchange and improve that piece of code. So this is just one simple example. I think another one is when people are interrupting.
That's my annoyance. Yes.
Yeah. So somebody is speaking, but somebody else jumps in because you want to react immediately and say immediately what you think because it's very, very important and you cannot wait 30 more seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, so some people consider that rude, some people consider that being active. So it's a very
Yeah.
wide range, again, of common senses.
Yeah, and I think that's one um, general factor to take into account whenever we discuss about these team agreements is that they are not universal.
They
Any of these
cannot be
team
universal.
agreements,
Yes.
yeah, any of these, if you take them to another team, into another city, into another country, on another continent, they might say, oh, we either don't have this problem or we don't think that's a problem. We like when people interrupt each other and are very, come with ideas one on top of each other, and somehow it works for the teams and nobody gets upset.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. So it's important to understand that each one of us has some personal preferences, but what we are trying to do with the team agreements is to find those preferences that work best for all of us from the team. And we might like some of them better and some of them less.
Yes.
But if it's a net benefit for the team, that's what we are aiming for.
Yeah. Some other very important team agreements are around feedback, giving and receiving feedback. And this, let's say, that happens almost always when you start off with a big organization and you start trying to create cross-functional teams. because almost always those organizations aren't used to having feedback. So you need to be very explicit and very careful about introducing this feedback concept. And it's important to have both views: how we receive feedback, how we give feedback. For example, do we want to give feedback in public or in private? It's a very important thing, because some people feel bad about positive feedback in public. Most people feel bad about negative feedback in public. So sometimes you need an agreement around that, and then you need more details or around what are the methods, what is feedback. It's not really judgment or criticizing someone or something like that. It's just telling them an idea of some facts that could be improved and giving solutions. So there's a lot of work to be done typically on this way of giving and receiving feedback, and team agreements are really useful for this aspect.
Yes, I have a story about, well, two stories about that. One of that is a team from Mosaic Works, actually, where what we noticed as a team is that we didn't give enough positive feedback to each other. And this was one of our agreements: give more positive feedback. This doesn't necessarily mean, giving a prize for everything that you are doing, a participation prize. But it does mean acknowledging when somebody has finished something on time or earlier, or it's good both for you and for the person receiving the feedback to do that. You'll feel better, they will feel better, the whole team will feel better in the end, if you start spreading this positivity a bit inside the team. And this is particularly because in many of the technical teams that I worked with, they tend to be very negative. They tend to find all the holes in the system, all the problems. And I guess this is part of the training of programmers and testers, and figuring out what doesn't work and how to improve it. But with people, it's not as nice to keep talking only about negative things. Try watching the news like 24 hours only the negative news, and see what that does to your overall morale, and you'll understand what the problem might be.
Yeah.
The second story I have about feedback is from a Danish company, and this was a very interesting cultural challenge. The Danish culture praises people who do not place themselves above others. So you have to be as similar to the others as possible, if that makes any sense. And I realized after a while that they were having problems giving feedback, because giving feedback meant to them that you would place yourself above the other person. And despite all the other things that are good in the Danish society, they were very open to communication, to exposing their failures, to discuss problems, things that you see more rarely in, let's say, Latin cultures. There it was very open, very direct. We could discuss a lot of things. But the moment you ask them to give feedback, that was an issue. So I had to work with them and to explain that, giving feedback is not necessarily, does not mean that you place yourself above others. It means that you are trying together to make things better, right? this is what you are trying to do. It means collaborative problem solving. It just means that you notice something and that you want to work with the other person to improve things. And I think that was a very interesting lesson for me, because I wasn't used with this type of thinking before. Okay, so this concludes to my two stories. There's one team agreement that I like a lot, that I took from, I think it's part of the core commitments, if I remember correctly. Commit to engage when present. And it's quite dense, so it's useful to talk a bit about it. I often notice people who go to meetings and think they are prisoners of the meeting, in a way. They are there because they have to be there, but they don't actually want to be there, and they don't think they can bring any value, and so on. And so what this rule does is saying, okay, you are there for the sake of the team and to help and support your team. Engage, right? Be in the meeting. If you are there physically, be there also mentally.
Yeah.
And this is a commitment that is difficult to achieve, particularly if you find that meetings boring and so on. But if you do, at least asking yourself this question allows you to say, okay, so I have some difficulties getting engaged in that meeting. Let's discuss with the Scrum Master. Let's ask them, I don't know what I'm supposed to do in that meeting. How can I contribute? I don't feel like I'm contributing enough. Let's see how we can deal with that. And normally a Scrum Master should be able to help figure out this thing. In more advanced teams, it can be coupled with the 2 feet rule, the rule of 2 feet. It says whenever you are not contributing, whenever you are not learning, use your 2 feet and move somewhere else. This might seem like a very weird rule in a very strict corporate environment and so on. That's why talking about it in a more advanced context where people are already committed. They go to meetings precisely to contribute with something that they can to help the other team members, to help the team. And sometimes they need to be there for the whole duration, but sometimes they just have one little thing to contribute and then they can leave. So there's also this kind of coupling that you can do. And the interesting thing is in a few teams where we applied the law of 2 feet, people actually stayed more in the meeting than before, and they were more engaged.
So before. Yeah, if you have the option, the freedom to leave, maybe you don't feel trapped anymore.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, many of these are psychological in nature. It's worth noting that. And you also need to pay attention to possible psychological traps. But sometimes they have some good and some unexpected happy consequences, like this one. One trap that you can get into, though, is you're mentioning things like being late at meetings. One common idea that people have is, let's penalize everybody who is late at meetings. And penalize, maybe, you need to add €1 to the team's common, how to say, money saving, and we'll spend that on pizza at the end or something like that. The problem with that is that you are normalizing paying money for being late.
Yeah.
right?
Yes, that's this one with paying or with, I don't know, bringing up some types of penalizing, as you mentioned. I don't find it really appropriate.
Yeah,
I wouldn't use it.
because I think there's also an aspect of team agreements, which is what do you do when a team agreement is not followed?
You discuss about
All
it
right.
more.
Yeah, precisely. So you never try to impose penalties. You are not a tribunal. You are not
Mhm.
a. You need to uh, have more conversations and figure out and to give feedback to your colleagues who are not following this. And if most of the colleagues are not following the team agreement, then maybe it's not
It's
a
not a
good
team
team
agreement,
agreement.
yeah. But
Yeah.
with this one, with the being late, I know situation. I have been in these situations where there were a few people late, and if you'd have the rule of paying a penalty, then you wouldn't have the discussions that followed. And the discussions were about the difficulty of a few persons going to with their children to school and arriving at the office. That was before the pandemic, and arriving at the office in that time. So then in fact the solution wasn't to penalize those people, because anyway they were in a hurry. They wanted to get their children to school, and they wanted to go back at the office in due time, but they couldn't because of traffic or being late to the school or other reasons. And the solution was putting the meeting 30 minutes later, and then everybody was on time. So
Yeah.
that's why you need to discuss about them, about these situations, and not penalize.
Yeah. And I think this brings us to a very important thing that so if you take one thing out of this discussion, take this. In an agile team, always assume the best intentions of your team members.
Yes.
Right?
I
It's
don't
not
think.
that they don't.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone who is a saboteur by purpose and wants to make things bad on purpose. It's it. There are a few reasons. Typically, they that's the level of skills. It was a mistake, or it just happened. I think those are the situations. So if you understand that that's the level of skills, okay, you need to learn. That's fine. If just happened, yeah, it just happened. It happens, so you cannot do much. So yeah, you need to look at things from this perspective, that everybody's trying their best.
Yeah. And people have good days and bad days. If you are arriving late at the office because your child was sick and uh, you couldn't reach the hospital in time because it was
Hmm.
there were some traffic problems and so on and so forth. So it's you have already a huge long baggage
Yeah. So
before you.
also in the core protocols from McCarthy's that you mentioned, was there's this idea with checking in, and that's one of the reasons. So there you could have a team agreement that when you arrive, you say something like one word of how you feel, just one word.
Mhm.
So you say tired, frustrated, annoyed, full of energy, or yeah, it's not one word, but again, something that states very shortly your state of mind. And if you arrive there, so let's say that you have a strategic meeting, strategy meeting, very complicated, very difficult, and from 5 people, 4 will say that I'm frustrated and annoyed and tired. Maybe you should postpone it. So that's a very good way of looking at team agreements, and understanding each other, understanding that we have other things beyond the office and beyond the whatever we're working in that organization, and sometimes you just need to adapt. I think
Yeah.
it brings more humanity to work than what some organizations are doing.
And I think this is my favorite part of introducing agility in an organization. It brings you as the whole human that you are at work. You are no longer just a professional. You are also the whole person, and because of that, you can be more effective and you can feel better, right? So, what should happen if you apply and if you find the right team agreements and if you negotiate them and if you apply them is that everybody feels a bit better uh, during the day while you work, right? Uh, one thing, for example, that I normalized and that I didn't realize was such a problem is sometimes I would have in the team, I would have a task and it just didn't click, right? And then I would get up and say, okay, so I don't know what's going on, but I don't feel it. It doesn't work today. It just doesn't work. And later on, my team colleagues were telling me that it's the first time that they realized that you can actually say that in a team. Uh, and that's really weird because we have this view of developers who are, I don't know, like stars and deliver the maximum possible value every day, and they are
the hackers
just
from the movies that type really fast, those are the ones always solve things
and
in
you
30 seconds.
and you hide away everything else that maybe doesn't work that day, and you just kind of push it down and things just click and work for you perfectly every single day.
Yeah.
It does not work like that. You need to accept that you will have good days and bad days, and sometimes you will need the help for your colleague in order to solve some things, because sometimes you just need the duck to talk to and tell it, so I have this problem, blah blah blah. Thank you for helping me, I just found the solution. It just works that way. Okay. We are close to the end of this, but before we end, I think it's useful to mention a few words about how to start with team agreements.
Yeah, so I think you should never start with team agreements saying these are the agreements the boss told you, so now let's use them. Let's agree that these are the agreements. So that's not team agreements. You should start from asking everyone what are their values, their principles, and then discuss about them. And they will come to a form at one moment when the team will understand each other. And I think this one first attempt at discussing team agreements and everyone explaining their point of view is the first step in creating a cross-functional team that can work together well.
Yeah, and if you find this very difficult, it's because, well, it is. Yeah, but also one thing you can do to get a grasp of what people find more important or less important, you can start from lists of team agreements and do dot voting on them and see which are prioritized by the team. But they should be varied enough to include various parts, so like, I don't know, being late or not at meetings, when can you interrupt people while doing work, but also how you prepare and so on. So you can always start from like a list of examples, then ask people to add some more if they feel like the more ideas come, and then prioritize them and then discuss and perhaps restructure or restate some of those. And it's important to understand, as we said a few times during this chat, that this is just a starting point. you will change these agreements. You might change them at a daily scrum, you might change them at a retrospective, but don't see them as the end all of, so you just did them and they are there and they never change. No, it's a living document, and some of them you will drop once they became a habit, but some of them might need to be added in time, depending on how the team changes or how the context of the team changes. Anything else you'd like to say about the topic?
I would like to close with this idea that you need to go beyond thinking that that person near you is just someone who is doing some work, and you need to go beyond that and try to understand that everybody's human like you, and they all have some needs that you need to understand, at least in a very simple form. You don't need to be friends, don't need necessarily to get along like buddies, but what you need to do is understand and have a bit of empathy about each other. With team agreement is the first step of doing that.
Okay, thank you, Adi, for this chat.
Thank you.
And before we close, let me tell you a few things. I published a video on another interesting topic, how to develop your intuition, particularly your intuition for software design, but not only. Answering a question, so you can find this in the Raise the Bar playlist. And we have to pay our dues to the YouTube algorithm, so please like, share, subscribe, tell other people about this, write a comment, suggest or ask questions if you think that you have other topics that are interesting to you. We are always interested in discussing topics that are interesting to our audience. You can also contact us through the website mosaicworks.com or through Twitter, and we'll look into the questions that you ask us and include them into our chats. I'd like to thank you so much for watching or for listening, and until next time, remember to think, design, and work smart.